This as a number of their candidates opted instead to attend the rallies of other presidential aspirants.
This is not exactly new, as having common candidates has long been practiced to complete a senatorial ticket's 12 slots. What makes a difference is these candidates expressly support a presidential aspirant. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Hall.
I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. As presidential candidates introduced their senatorial slates during their proclamation rallies, it was quite noticeable that some senatorial candidates belong to more than one party.
While the practice of sharing candidates is not new, experts say this does not work all the time to the candidate's advantage. Marian Enriquez gives us a front seat to the top story.
After his absence in Vice President Leni Robredo's proclamation rally, clad in white in a sea of pink, Sorsogon Governor Jesus Escudero shared the stage with the VP on Tuesday, but still made no formal endorsement of Robredo. While he is part of Robredo's ticket, Cheese is still running as senator under the Nationalist People's Coalition. He is also part of the roster of Senators Manny Pacquiao and Ping Lacson. Escudero is not alone. Senators Sherwin Gatchalian and Mig Zubiri, who attended the Uniteam rally of Sara and Marcos Jr., are also part of Pacquiao's slate. Senator Richard Gordon attended the Leni Kiko rally, while also being a candidate of the Lacson Soto and Pacquiao Atienza tickets. In fact, Pacquiao had to drop Nery Colmenares after he expressly endorsed Robredo's candidacy.
Pinili nila si Lene kaysa ako. So wala tayong magagawa. 11 pero may rami na mga guest candidate. At least alam natin kung ano sila, kung ano yung naging desisyon nila.
There are a host of other candidates which are part of no less than 2 senatorial slates. For Lacson, it's okay as long as they do not officially endorse a tandem.
Ibang usapan, kapag kami tinatakwil na, hindi naman kami papayag din ng ganon. So, maski nga 3 lang yung matira sa aming senatorial candidates, basta't alam namin kami yung dinadala o kung hindi man kami dinadala, hindi nagdadala ng iba, okay sa amin yun.
Political pundits say common candidates aren't new in elections.
Yung mga pagpipilian nilang mga kandidato ay hindi napakarami. So yun at yun din mga tao ang napipili nila.
Mukhang ang nagbabind sa ganitong estratehiya ay yung posibleng winnability ng mga senador na makakadagdag sa isang presidential candidate.
Also noticeable is that most of the adopted candidates are re-electionists. However, Professor Manhit says this may cause confusion.
Kung saan dapat aliado sila pero kaalyado rin sila ng kalaban, magkakaroon ng confusion.
With senatoriables free to campaign without endorsing any tandem, experts believe it's more important than ever to vote based on principles and ideologies. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
Is sharing candidates an effective strategy, and for whom? To give us an insight, we have political analyst Professor Jean Encinas Franco on the line. Professor Franco, welcome to The Big Story.
Hi, good evening, Robbie. Good evening, Gretchen.
Professor, this is not new, but from past experience, who wins in this relationship? The presidential aspirant or the senatorial candidates?
Both, but the loser is the voters, the Filipino people, because the idea dilutes the very essence of representation. When you are a legislator, when you're aspiring to be a legislator, you have to stand for something. And it's difficult if you confuse the people about where you stand on certain issues, which the candidates represent. I understand that they're just guest candidates, but then, when you attend a proclamation rally, that means a lot. So, the voters are not only confused, it also dilutes the idea of representation.
Yes, but Professor, so as they walk this tightrope over the next 3 months, how realistic is it that these senatorial candidates will not actually be endorsing anyone? How long can they keep that up?
Yeah, that's a good question. In fact, I think things will unravel in the coming months, and then I think some senatorial bets will definitely be pressured to take a stand. I think that will happen, and I think some presidential votes will eventually, take out other guest candidates who have shown disloyalty for whatever they represent. I think that will happen in one way or another.
Or could they just be a barometer of who's winnable and who's leading? I mean, is it possible that these candidates will just eventually consolidate to one or two of the top emerging candidates?
Yeah, that's also possible. But then remember, your people do not actually vote for. They vote separately for senators and presidents and vice presidents. So they can actually, choose whoever they will vote for president and vice president, senators, even if they have different stances on issues.
Okay, Professor Franco, maraming salamat po. That was political analyst Professor Jean Encinas Franco. Presidential aspirants are wasting no time as they leave their hometowns to make the rounds across the Philippines. A look at day 2 of the campaign period in Romel Lopez report.
After starting with a bang on day 1 of the campaign period, candidates now do more legwork as the election season heats up. Save for one presidential aspirant, former Senator Ferdinand Marcos Jr. No agenda today for the unit team after making a big splash at the Philippine Arena in Bulacan. But whether or not we'll get to see Marcos Jr. in future forums, his camp says it depends on the format.
Mas na-appreciate ng tao yung 1-hour program na one-on-one. Mas maraming nasasagot extensively.
If unit team paused on Tuesday, Senator Manny Pacquiao's camp hit the ground running at the Pacman village in Sarangani. He touts the property as a fruit of his housing promise for every Filipino.
Baka sabihin, pamulitika itong akin. Matagal ko nang inumpisahan ito bago pa ako napasok sa politika.
Meanwhile, the tandem of Senators Ping Lacson and Tito Soto went to vote-rich Quezon City. Soto claims they got the support of QC Mayor Joy Belmonte. Belmonte, however, has yet to issue a formal endorsement for their bid. Manila Mayor Isko Moreno meanwhile conducted a sortie in Rizal on Wednesday. Moreno already secured the support of Cebu Congressman JP Garcia, but whether or not this means securing Cebu province, Moreno had this to say.
Ayoko naman pangunahan si Governor Gwen. Si Congressman PJ, ano naman talaga, nagsuporta na yon. Tumutulong na si Kong PJ.
As for Labor leader Leody de Guzman, he admitted lapses in securing Comelec's permit for their proclamation rally.
Mayroong konting drama pero naniniwala ako na maayos yung problema.
And Vice President Leni Robredo visited Sorsogon, where she held a rally with shared senatorial candidate Chis Escudero. Robredo also delivered a speech before their supporters and vowed to have an honest government if she gets elected. For News 5, Romel Lopez. We are One News.
These are the other big stories tonight. The Interior Department is looking at possible health protocol violations as thousands flocked to proclamation rallies on day 1 of the campaign. The man behind a TikTok threat against Ferdinand Marcos Jr. surrenders, but claims he was just framed. And despite getting nods from other award-giving bodies, Lady Gaga missed out on an Oscar nomination for House of Gucci. These big stories after the break.
You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hoff.
With thousands gathering across various locations, the COMELEC could not help but be disappointed over the poor adherence to COVID protocols.
The Interior Department says it is now looking into possible shortcomings from the candidates' part. Greg Gregorio with the story.
From shouting during motorcades to taking off face masks during crowded sorties, these were just some of the violations spotted on day one of the campaign season. Needless to say, COMELEC was disappointed.
Kita naman natin na kaya naman kontrolin talaga kung gugustuhin. Ang problema kasi, yung kanilang mga supporters, yung mga nanonood sa mga rally nila at lumalaho, ay hindi nila nakontrol.
Recall that in a November resolution, the COMELEC set up a campaign committee that shall regulate in-person campaign activities subject to an area's COVID situation. The Interior Department says it's now looking into each candidate's compliance to health standards.
Kung makikita po natin na paulit-ulit na itong gagawin, we will have no recourse but to prosecute them, no, by filing charges against them.
The poll body admits that they have also received other reports of potential violations, including the illegal posting of campaign materials. There were also reports of illegal use of government vehicles after Ferdinand Marcos Jr. was seen riding a red plate vehicle on February 7, a day before the start of the campaign. They plan to clarify this with the DILG and the Civil Service Commission.
Will there be a difference in the treatment of these vehicles as well? Will the accommodations extended to political officers cover also their assigned government resources?
With the campaign season fully underway, the COMELEC Citizens Armed Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting, or PPCRV, called on the public to refrain from vote buying.
Huwag na kayong tumanggap o huwag nyo nang pag-aksayahan ng panahon ang mga kandidatong bumibili ng boto. Yun ang vote buying. Kasi that's a very great evil.
The COMELEC says a person may document a possible case of vote buying, file a complaint, and pursue the case. Complaints may be submitted through email at sumbungko@votesafe.ph or via Twitter using #Sumbungko. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
The start of the campaign season comes at a time when COVID infections in the Philippines are coming down by the day. Tonight's big number is 3,651. That's the total number of new COVID-19 cases recorded today. That marks 2 straight days of infections at around the 3,000 level. Octa Research says if cases continue this downward trend, the country could have a 3-digit daily case count by March. But the think tank is warning against complacency, especially during the election season, as campaign activities may be super spreader events. Cases might be on a downtrend, but the Philippines still could use all the help it could get to arrest the spread of the virus, including cheaper molnupiravir. And yes, the antiviral drug will now be locally produced at a cheaper rate. More in mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez report.
The Philippines can soon expect a more affordable molnupiravir. The Food and Drug Administration granted emergency use authorization to Lloyd Laboratories to locally produce the pill. FDA OIC Director Oscar Gutierrez said that while there have been approved imported brands, supply remains limited.
Yung una nating na-approve, yung Molnars, 3 batches po yung pinarating sa atin, pero bawat batch po mga 60,000 lang yon. Mga 1,500 patients lang po yung bawat batch.
Gutierrez added the local firm can manufacture 1 million capsules a year, enough for 25 to 50,000 COVID-19 patients. Once it begins production, the drug will be sold for 30 to 50% less than branded ones. Molnupiravir is an oral treatment for mild to moderate COVID-19 patients, where 8 capsules are taken orally for 5 days, a total of 40 capsules.
Mga 100 to 150 po per capsule po ang molnupiravir. Ang Lloyd ay i-market niya siguro between 50 to 75 pesos na lang per capsule.
Pharma giant Merck had previously given its patent to generic companies to help low-income countries produce it. However, Products given an EUA can only be bought by the national government.
I-deliver po ito ng DOH sa mga health facilities and healthcare provider. Sila po ang magpo-provide dito sa mga pasyente.
Meanwhile, the FDA approved the emergency use of more brands of Molnupiravir, aside from Faberca's Molnars and Medethic's Molnuflu. The agency also mentioned Pfizer has submitted its EUA application for Paxlovid, which is now under evaluation. There are now at least 6 brands of COVID-19 drug that have emergency use approval from the FDA. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
For the big story in sports, Gilas Pilipinas gets a boost for their upcoming FIBA World Cup qualifiers with the addition of Japan B-League standout 30 Ravenna in the lineup. Earlier today, Ravenna posted on Instagram his training session at the Moro Lorenzo Sports Center with the Gilas team. The 24-year-old is now the third B-League import to come home and join Gilas after Dwight Ramos and Juan Gomez de Llano. The B-League trio joins the remaining Gilas core as well as some shoe-ins from TNT Tropang Giga. Philam coach Eric Spoelstra continues to break barriers after his name was added to the list of the top 15 coaches in NBA history. Ever since he took over as head coach of the Miami Heat in 2008, Spoelstra led the team to 5 NBA Finals appearances and 2 championships. Currently, he is only second to the Spurs' Greg Popovich as the longest tenured head coach in the NBA. The Heat, meanwhile, are currently atop the Eastern Conference standings with a 35-20 slate.
Signal is set to provide free internet access to Odette-hit areas through its satellite broadband service, Signal Connect. In cooperation with its partners, Signal will use its VSAT technology to boost communication in Puerto Princesa in Palawan, Tagbilaran City in Bohol, Maasin City in Southern Leyte, and the Dinagat Islands. More than 1 million families are still reeling from the aftermath left by Typhoon Odette. Many have been left without connectivity as cell towers and fiber cables are being replaced.
Time for another quick break. When we return, the TikTok user linked to the alleged death threat against presidential candidate Ferdinand Marcos Jr. voluntarily surrenders to the NBI. Oscar nominations are up, but what has been creating a buzz are the movies and actors that were not on the list. And a Basahan Eleganza extravaganza. We tell you why Pinoys could not get enough of Vogue magazine's featured art piece. Details after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. Select schools in Metro Manila resumed face-to-face classes today as the NCR region reverts back to Alert Level 2.
More students are said to have enrolled this time as the Department of Health also started giving COVID-19 shots to children ages 5 to 11. Shaida Francisco with the story.
Days after the government lowered COVID-19 alert levels, select schools finally resumed face-to-face classes after more than a month. Over in Pedro Cruz Elementary School in San Juan, teachers had to keep reminding their students to follow health protocols, as students from kinder to grade 3 were already preoccupied with activities on the first day. After a half day of classes, kids went home satisfied.
Mas gusto mo sa school o mas gusto mo sa bahay ngayon?
Gusto ko sa school.
Bakit gusto mo sa school ngayon?
Kasi mas masaya.
Ano ang pinakamasayang part ng classes mo ngayon?
Science.
Science. Bakit science?
Nag-drawing po kami.
Parents, meanwhile, were also happy that kids finally get a sense of the old normal.
Sa mga magulang din, nahirapan din kami na rin talaga sa mga bata kung paano yun ituturo yung ng teacher. Sa mga bata naman, tinatanong namin, gustong-gusto na rin nila talaga. Kasi parang na rin sila yung nabubor na sila sa bahay.
Compared to the initial start of physical classes in December, the school saw an increase in enrollees. They attribute this to pediatric vaccinations.
Marahil ang naging dahilan ng pagtaas ay mas tumaas yung confidence level noong mga magulang dahil na-introduce na ng city government natin ang vaccination para sa mga bata.
Soon, more grade levels can also start conducting face-to-face classes, as the Education Department has approved the progressive expansion of in-person classes beginning Wednesday. The agency, however, admits that the COVID situation is still limiting the expansion phase. Out of more than 6,600 schools that passed safety assessment, only 304 were given the green light after shifting to alert levels 1 and 2.
We are studying the effect of the resumption of classes and learning from it. We can all the learnings that we can apply pagka sakaling dumami na yung schools.
DepEd says while the resumption of classes is gradual, they are confident that it will help improve the education situation amid the pandemic. Shaila Francisco, We Are One News.
The TikTok user linked to the alleged death threat against presidential bet Ferdinand Marcos Jr. surrenders to the NBI to clear his name. Bong Ricafort says he was framed and that someone used his name and photo to create a fake TikTok account. The NBI challenges Ricafort to surrender his gadgets for forensic examination and to take a lie detector test to prove his innocence. The Bureau sent Ricafort home, saying they will not yet treat him as a suspect.
These are the other big stories around the world. Former Pope Benedict XVI admits errors and is asking for forgiveness for having mishandled the sex abuse cases during his term as Archbishop of Munich. The Vatican issued the letter from Pope Benedict following a report released by German investigators last month on abuse in the Archdiocese from 1945 to 2019. Although sorrowful, Benedict's lawyers argued he was not directly to blame as his actions were mischaracterized and some facts were supposedly ignored. Abuse victims are lamenting the lack of a proper apology.
The Academy is keeping us on our toes after it announced the 2022 Oscar nominations on Tuesday. The ultimate shocker, Lady Gaga's exclusion in the Best Actress list for her role in House of Gucci. This, despite securing nods at the BAFTA, Critics' Choice, and SAG Awards. But the Academy went on a different route, nominating Kristen Stewart instead for her portrayal of Princess Diana in Spencer. Stewart was earlier shut out by SAG. She will be competing with other nominees, Jessica Chastain, Olivia Colman, Nicole Kidman, and Penelope Cruz.
our first run together.
Meanwhile, leading in the number of nominations is The Power of Dog, which got 12, including Best Picture and Best Director, among others. Coming in second is Dune with 10 nods. Films West Side Story and Belfast are tied with 7 nominations. The awarding ceremony will take place in March. For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
Aside from the elections or the Oscars, Vogue magazine's featured artist is also making a buzz among Filipinos online.
Pinoys could not get enough of Elise McMahon's t-shirt waist loom, which they say looks a lot like the retaso rugs we buy on the street. Much like the retaso rug, which Pinoys used as doormats, McMahon's woven fabrics are also made out of old t-shirts, which were recycled and turned into art. It even has the vibrant colors and loom pattern associated with retaso rugs.
Vogue's Instagram post received more than 1,000 comments, mostly from Pinoys. One user said, "In the Philippines, we call it doormats." Another called the featured work, "Basahan eleganza extravaganza."
Creative talaga mga Pinoy, ano?
Kung maganda, maganda.
Oo, pwede pala natin pagkakitaan yan. Pwede bang NFT yun? Picturean mo lang yung basahan mo sa bahay.
Oh, naalala ko dati, di ba? A few years ago, meron din nag-trend, di ba? Yung branded na bayong.
Oh, yun! Oo, tapos yung, ano matawag doon? Bilao ba yun? Yung sa, ano?
Oo. Tapos nakahang sa
Maganda naman
wall.
kasi talaga ang kultura natin. Kaya pagyamanin pa natin at i-appreciate natin most of all. Well, that wraps up today's Big Story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. We are One News. Have a good evening.